pretty good season for Wisconsin last year. You get back to the tournament, almost win the Big Ten title. Obviously, not ideal what happened in the tournament against James Madison, but you'd like to see a Greg Gard team play a little bit not a little bit faster, but offensively, this was a top 20 unit. So there was a lot to like about the product on court last year, but you lose a lot of pieces. Christian and Nick here with Nick Osen, who covers Wisconsin on 247, does great work over there. And Nick, what I want to know is what is the vibe right now at Wisconsin? Are people frustrated that so much talent left? Or are people still frustrated about that early tournament loss, being so close to the Big Ten tournament title? And what are expectations looking like for this season?
Absolutely, Christian. So, I think we're going to get a better feel for the vibe here as fall kind of progresses and we get a little bit more time around the team. But just from, kind of speaking with people, connected people, fans, kind of stepping back and looking a little bit more at just kind of like why they lost certain players, like some of the NIL numbers, as I'm sure you guys know or have seen out there, are crazy. I think there's like a, quiet kind of confidence and excitement about this year. Like you mentioned, losing some top guys. Obviously, it's never ideal to lose one of the, the top players in the country, potentially an AJ Storr. Chucky Hepburn was here for a long time. But I think, and I know we're going to get into the roster pieces a little bit more, I think what Greg Gard and the staff did in terms of kind of backfilling those spots, I think has actually been really good. There are some vets that have been around this game a long time. Stephen Crowell, Max Klesmit that are back. I expect jumps for some of these younger guys. And I just feel like overall, I'm sure you guys can attest to this doing this show so often. I think this Big Ten conference is wide open. Like Zach Edey's gone. The conference lost some stars. I think of a team like Illinois that lost a lot of players too. Michigan State's kind of a question mark. So while I'm not going as far as saying, hey, I'm picking Wisconsin to win the Big Ten, I think you could legitimately say 7, 8, 9 teams could be near the top. And because of that, I think that there's a lot of kind of excitement and maybe some question marks, but in a good way, to see what this group can look like here this winter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think the Big Ten's wide open from top to bottom, honestly. You hit on some key players back, Klesmit coming back, Crawl coming back. But there's 3 guys that I like, but I have question marks that are coming in this season. Cameron Hunter, he missed all of last season, but he was a really dynamic playmaker, scorer for Central Arkansas when he did see the court the year prior. Amos and Tanji are both guys who I've liked, but they both ended the season, not how they'd like to last season, hurt. So those are 3 key players this season. So what can we expect out of them in year 1 of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I'll start with a guy like Xavier Amos. Little bit closer here to Wisconsin. He was at NIU, obviously, Midwest kid. I think the talent is unquestioned. I think that he's got some of the length, the athleticism. From what I've heard, I think he's really been hitting the weight room hard since he moved up here because you've got to get stronger, of course, to play in a spot like the Big Ten. But, in terms of like excitement from like the fan side, maybe separating from the media side, he's the guy that the fans were quite excited about. When I started hearing there was a chance with him and, reporting on that was a big deal. Cameron Hunter, man, I feel like is almost the perfect replacement for a guy like Chucky Hepburn. Now, I think there are a lot of guards that can handle the rock, which we will touch on as well. But he's a guy when healthy, he just impresses you right away with his personality. We got to talk when he committed. Just a really good, hardworking, humble person. You mentioned injury, but should be in much better shape this season in terms of that. Strong, left-handed point guard, can get to the cup. Decent shooter. I like him in the mid-range. I'd certainly like him driving. But he can hit some threes. I'm forgetting the percent right now from 2 years ago. I want to say it was low 30s, low to mid-30s. But he can certainly hit, out there. And then John Tanji, man, he's been around the game a long time. But, I think you think of what he did at Colorado State. Really a potential star that was like very highly coveted in the portal after his time there. Another guy that dealt with a lot of injuries, but from what we've seen and what the social media team has shared, just through some of his highlights and some of the things at practice, man, he looks pretty good. Like he's kind of the man amongst boys type in terms of age, strength. I'm not sure he's great at one thing, but he's good at a lot of things. A really good locker room guy. And, between those 3, really, I mean, you're looking at mostly vets within it. I think just some really smart, well thought out acquisitions or additions, I should say, to the team that I think are going to only help really the floor of this unit, whereas some of the younger guys could probably raise the ceiling.
Amos and Hunter, I wasn't super familiar with. I just didn't watch much Central Arkansas, Northern Illinois. But John Tonje is a guy I watched a lot at Colorado State, and I was really impressed by him. I was a huge fan of his game. He took a lot of pressure off, Isaiah Stevens and even David Roddy back when he was there. Like, he was really good. He, like you said, he's good at a lot of different things. Super strong, can shoot it. He's like 6'6" on the wing and put it on the floor, defend, like plays with energy. I'm a huge fan of him, and I was just kind of confused at what happened last year with Mizzou. It didn't seem like super clear because they'd be like, he's injured, but then he's like playing 8 minutes a game. And I'm like for like, what was that? Like 7 games. So it's like, why is he out there? It was just kind of weird. Missouri was a train wreck. I think a change of scenery could be great for him. He's definitely a guy. It's good to hear that the news has been good on him because I loved watching him play at Colorado State. Another guy that I think is really key here is John Blackwell. He definitely on a really deep team last year showed a lot of flashes. So is there a big sophomore leap that is expected of him, and what does he need to do to make that leap?
There is. I would say just getting to know him a little bit. The flashes that he showed last year, a little bit of the buzz here this off season, and like I said, we'll get more in the coming weeks. But guys, this is a potential star because again, he was good at a ton of things. Like, he needs to put it on the floor more, but he could dribble a little bit, can certainly pass, can drive, love him in the mid-range, can defend, crazy high energy levels. Really impressive young man, mature for a freshman. So I do see a jump happening. I was kind of curious. I'm still curious because we haven't seen practice yet, how the lineup's going to shake out in terms of that guard/wing spot, just because they do have some good bodies there between Blackwell, Klesmit, Tonje, Hunter at a guard spot. Somebody's obviously going to be coming off the bench, but Blackwell I expect to be probably a top 2, top 3 guy, probably top 2 on this team, certainly. Just he's so complete. I think that he was a guy that I'm sure other teams were probably thinking about, oh, he could be, a great addition to this team. And I think just the way that Wisconsin was able to recruit him so well early, build that trust and early development, Christian, I think he's going to be big time and a name that, we're all big hoop heads, so we were familiar, but I think the national stage is going to know a lot more about him this winter.
Yeah, I just want to add to that and say Blackwell is going to be really important because Wisconsin just doesn't really get on the transition or run like that. They're 330th in offensive possession length, and it came down to the end of the shot clock a lot last season, like under 5 seconds, just letting Storr create. And with Storr gone now, I think that Blackwell picks up that role. I think it's going to come down to him towards the end of the shot clock to create a lot. So there's going to be a lot on his shoulders for sure this season.
That's a good point. Also, I totally misspoke earlier when I meant to say Wisconsin was better offensively. I said that they were playing faster. I know they weren't playing faster. It was just interesting to see. Usually it's a defense, like when you check on KenPom and everything. It's usually a team that hangs their hat on the defensive end. So I guess that'll lead to me asking: do you think defensively this team will be better last year? I mean, they were under Greg Gard. Ready? Here are the finishes: 13th, 9th, 66th. That was the year 2018. They were not very good. 4th, 17th, 15th, 34th, 19th, and then 46th, which isn't a huge drop off. But do you think that was mostly personnel driven? That it was kind of just more of an offensive minded team, like with a guy like AJ Storr? Or why do you think that number was a little lower last year? And do you expect that to be the emphasis of being a team that hangs their hat on defensive end again?
Yeah, I think at times, Storr got a bad rap for that defensively because he was certainly offensive minded, but it wasn't just on his shoulders. Like, I think there were several guys that can improve, and I think they have. I think that post defense, I'm expecting to be a little bit better this year. Again, Stephen Crowell is a really, really good player. I've heard good things about Nolan Winter, who showed a few flashes last year. Like, he didn't quite play as much as Blackwell, of course, but like, you see the body, you see the length, going up for block shots. You see the skill set. He's a guy that I expect to take a nice leap to. And just as a whole, yeah, I still think it's going to be a nice offensive team. But just knowing, the staff and how they operate a little bit, I think defense will be more heavily oriented. And I think that's going to be helpful because if you can defend, again, in this conference that is like completely wide open, I think you can be in just about every game. And I certainly expect that to be paramount to this team's success.
Yeah, we talk about the store edition, but I mean, this was a team that was 17th in KenPom last season, the highest grade guards ever had at Wisconsin. Year before that, 2023, they were 140th, the worst he's ever had. You don't just jump up 100-plus spots at KenPom just because of one guy. It just doesn't happen. So what did grade guard do differently last season to get the most out of this team and have the best offense in this KenPom era?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And I think that is a clear answer to that. I think staff gets credit. I think personnel certainly gets credit, whether store or guys taking jumps, like a Max Klesmit, Blackwell obviously coming in. But they also brought in one of their former stars from, probably around the time we were all born or so, late 90s, early 2000s. And that's Kirk Penny, who had a long career playing FIBA basketball, European basketball. He's from New Zealand. Actually was recently inducted into the FIBA Hall of Fame. And he just has a really strong mind and experience in terms of creating offensive wrinkles and opening things up, especially through like some freedom of movement and things of that nature. And so I think he's been a massive, massive addition to this team's offense. Coach Gard has given him a lot of credit. And I think if you ask me to, really choose one answer for that great question, he would probably be it. I think he's really impressed, and I think his responsibilities are only going to increase going forward.
That's a great answer. And that's why I love doing this series, because as guys trying to cover the whole sport, like we got to go to the source to find out stuff like that. Like assistant coaches are super important at the collegiate level. And like, it's hard sometimes to be able to track all that. So that's an awesome answer. And I'm glad you're able to give us that. So just as we dig a little bit more into this roster, is there anyone that we haven't mentioned that you think is going to play a key role off the bench? Like we know Kamari McGee will get in there as a depth guard, but any of these young guys or other vets on the roster you think will be important off the bench?
Yeah, one guy that I'm really excited about, I was fortunate to cover a lot of his recruitment. Actually, back when I was at Iowa State, I knew him a little bit. And then, of course, coming here, and that's true freshman point guard Daniel Freitag. Now, I like him a lot better. He's a point guard, and I like him there, but he's athletic enough, skilled enough where I think he can play off the ball too. Like, I think he can play with a Cam Hunter or Max Klesmit, John Blackwell, whoever's, maybe leading the charge with the ball there. Really exciting player, like very athletic. He actually could have gone D1 in football as a wide receiver. And I remember seeing his tape. So he possesses that high motor, skilled, really good handles, can get to the cup really well. He would tell you himself that he's really focused on, improving his consistency with the jump shot and things like that recently. It'll be interesting because the more I look, it is still a pretty deep team. But, I mean, I don't see him not being a part of the rotation. So I think he's a player. You mentioned Kamari McGee. And then I'll just mention, we touched on him a little bit, but Max Klesmit, I think a lot of people just maybe don't talk about him as often. But he's as tough of a player as you will see in the Big Ten in terms of sheer toughness. He will take on the opponent's best player. And he had a couple games. I want to say he scored like 48 between two games last year, like a 27 and 21 point outing, I believe, late November, early December. When he gets hot, like I remember the Marquette game, Ohio State game, he like won that game for them. He can really get hot. So, and just a really good leader too. Somebody I've really enjoyed covering. And I think he's somebody that isn't maybe talked about enough too, guys.
That's a really fair point. I feel like we didn't give him his flowers enough on this. And he definitely took a jump from, his first year at Wisconsin to second, coming over from Wofford. And I also feel like this is not fully backed by data. This is just from my memory and like glancing at his game log, is that when he plays well, they win. It seems like, when he was knocking down shots, and he goes for 15 plus, like they're going to win. And it's the games where he's not either involved or he's not hitting is when offense is more of a struggle. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah. I think that he's kind of that perfect player that you could call like an X factor, because he's worth more than that. Like he's always going to bring it on defense, leadership, high energy. He can actually handle the ball a little bit too, but man, when that shot is on, like he's a really, really impressive player. Like he looked at times, I swear to you, like a first team all conference guy. I mean, just some of the shots he would take and make, quite impressive. And he's somebody, man, team first. So like he doesn't kind of relish in those moments, like with like an ego or personality or anything. He's just trying to win the games. And I know that him coming back, not only to Wisconsin, but coming back this year as a veteran, Stephen Crowell doing the same. Like these guys want to achieve some tournament success, and I'm excited to see what they can do.
Nick, any last questions for Nick?
No, I don't. I mean, just real quick, we don't have to get deep into this one. This was on my mind was I like the portal guys. I like the portal ads this season, but they're definitely buy low guys. No stars are walking through the door through the transport for Wisconsin. Is NIL a little bit of an issue in Madison?
I actually wouldn't say so. I think that maybe a guy like AJ Storr, like he'll command more, for sure. Though Wisconsin could have had a nice package for him if he wanted to stay, but I'll tell you guys like Xavier Amos, even Tanje, like they're getting, let's say their packages that were kind of looked at in the portal like are pretty competitive. As are, many on the current team, from what I've kind of heard and understand. You never get exact numbers and things like that. But I would say, they've got to be smart, right, and practical and strategic with that type of thing. But from what I have heard and understand, it's taken a nice jump the last couple of years with kind of the varsity collective and the usage for the hoops team.
Nice.
Last thing, is there a over under 25% chance that John Tanje is this team's leading scorer?
I would probably go with under, just because for a little while I thought that it was going to be Amos. And then from what we've, kind of heard and some of my colleagues have reported on our site, like John Blackwell has seemingly taken a big step. So I think it could be him. Man, if you play through the post more, I still love what Steve Crowell can do. So while I think that, Christian, that Tanje might have just the highest floor every time he steps out on the court, I would probably go with under, because I could see, personally, I think this is a team, and some of our great readers have said similarly, this is a team that I think you could play 7 games, have 5 different leading scorers.
No, it's awesome. Looks like a very balanced group, and in a not only a wide open Big Ten, but an even bigger Big Ten with 18 schools. It really seems like the range of outcomes for a lot of these schools is pretty wide. But we know Wisconsin's going to be well coached, with more emphasis on defense and plenty of talent on offense. Some veterans. I think this could definitely be a force to be reckoned with in the conference. So there you have it. Nick Osen, thank you so much for joining us. You've been awesome, and hope you guys have a great season in Madison.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it. Good talking with you.